Hello, Internet. My name is Chamomile.
And I'm Requiem. Excuse me. I'm Requiem.
Right. That seems legit.
Yeah, everything is fine. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw away this corkboard I made. I don't know what I was thinking. Obviously, Mother Sorrow has long ago left us alone. I'll just toss that out the window.
I mean, honestly, it was taking up a lot of space, so.
Yeah, where did you even get that corkboard?
I don't know. I didn't know I had one in the car.
It's probably fine. This is sort of like a modernist LA mansion. It's reminding me again that vampires should be able to see in the dark. Like, I know
Open.
we've hit that point before,
There.
but
What a nuisance. These adorable little creatures think they're a threat.
I do like the flesh warping thing, and it's something that, like, it's one of the original things that they did for World of Darkness that I really appreciate. How do you pronounce this clan's name? I can never remember it.
Zimichi. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope it's not a real thing that I'm mispronouncing. I hope it's just, some made up bullshit. What does the mummy wrap fetish do?
A mummy wrap fetish?
Yes, we have just acquired the mummy wrap fetish.
Finally. Obviously, we need to use it all the time.
I mean, there is no limit to the number of magic items we can benefit from, so yes, it will increase our healing rate by 20%, permanently forever.
Hooray! That's why mummies are the best. But the Zimichi, I would say, are a pretty successful like thing that they just made up, like comparatively. Like, I don't know how they sort of are supposed to represent Dracula at all. Like, they don't seem
Yeah,
Dracula-esque at all, but they are super cool. Like the whole flesh warping
yeah,
thing is cool. It's something you definitely want. It allows you a lot of stuff that, like, it lets you do it. It lets you do society. It lets you do the thing, and it's just cool in general. Like, it's possible to try to do something original and just completely botch it, but the Zimichi, I say, are a success.
definitely. The Zimichi are tons of fun. Uh,
Again, I don't see what they have to do with Dracula.
yeah, like, as a vampire type, they're I mean, there's probably a vampire in world mythology somewhere that works decently well with the flesh warping thing. But as a Strigoi type, I should say specifically, because all the vampires in Vampire the Masquerade are basically Strigoi. Uh, all these, none of this makes any sense with like the Strigoi archetype, but the Zimichi are a real cool idea in general, definitely.
Like, if you asked me, oh, Requiem, uh, what type of vampire was Dracula in World of Darkness, I would have said Ventru.
Right? Like, obviously. But yeah, no, he's supposed to be a Zimichi for some reason.
I remember, like, when Stoker describes Dracula, he describes him having this weird crest and a lot of spikes coming out of his body.
And, Dracula's famous minions, his three brides, each of whom has 6 legs stitched together to their body. A test of what? Your new video camera?
And in New World of Darkness, Dracula was obviously a gangrel.
I don't know anything about the New World of Darkness. For all I know, you're telling the truth.
I'm telling the truth.
Of course you are. That's always how this bit goes, isn't it? I'm supposed to say that can't tell if you're fucking with me, and
Admittedly, nobody remembers or cares about anything in the New World of Darkness. I think what they should have done is, like, they should have rebooted the setting, but they should have tried to make it seem much more similar to Old World of Darkness. Like keep the whole you want to drop the apocalypse thing because that was always a albatross around the neck of the setting, where it's like, oh, the apocalypse is just around the corner. We say for the next like 10 years.
Yeah, and it
also
also
like, clean out the stupid like. I don't like soft retcons. I think they draw attention to whatever you're doing, you're retconning. Don't have a thing where like, oh, the Ravnos aren't a thing anymore. Just be like, the Ravnos were never a thing. We're dropping that entirely. Don't soft retcon. It just draws attention to it. Do the hard retcon.
Yeah. And like Old World of Darkness was due for a reboot when it got rebooted. The problem is just that the reboot was bad.
I think they dropped a lot of stuff that people liked in the Old World of Darkness. It's basically its own setting entirely. Like they were passing references to Old World of Darkness, but it's like you probably still want 13 clans, but you want to actually figure out what your 13 clans are.
Yeah.
Like have them drawn out from the beginning. You want to drop the ones that are stupid or offensive or both.
You know, or even just the ones that are redundant. Like the Toreador and the Ventrue are both perfectly good clans. The problem is they're basically the same clan.
Yeah. And like you don't need to have your new setting be like, oh, we're like with 5th edition, it seems like they were, oh, we're as it was dropped off. I don't think you want to do that because it's like, this is like what, 20, 30-year-old meta plot, first of all. Second of all, like it gets too complex even for somebody who's following it pretty closely for having that much meta plot. Like, at some point, it's like nobody can have any idea what is going on. That is always what turned me off to the Forgotten Realms novels. I'd pick one up, and I'd be like, they're referencing a ton of stuff, I have no idea what it is.
Once again, fire just conveniently blocking the path out of the boss fight.
It's fine.
Now, where is my new friend? There you are.
This is how we get initiated into the Sabbat, right? We're joining them, right?
Alas,
I wasn't paying
no.
attention. I feel like it's my job in these playthroughs to only like 50% ever pay like 50% attention to the game, so I could be wrong about stuff. The problem with this game is I've played it through before, so I have to pay extra less attention to get stuff wrong. Is Zeniche romanceable?
He is not.
That's lame.
He is also a real nuisance to kill. His minions deal aggravated.
So annoying.
Yeah, his minions deal aggravated damage. He just spawns them endlessly while you know, then he teleports around. And so the whole thing here is that you have to go and catch up with him and shoot him dead. Plus, these things are kind of quick, which makes it hard to stay ahead of them.
That blood teleporting thing he does is pretty cool.
It's a cool idea. It's a very annoying boss fight mechanic. Game designers don't do this. It is not fun to chase a boss around an arena like this.
Do those flesh spawn things spawn infinitely?
Yes.
Oh, fun.
So yeah, it's basically just a matter of running around, waiting for the Zumichi to pop up, and then when he does, you have to shoot him lots. There you are.
And then he's so impressed he gives us the romance side quest, right?
Sure. Go ahead. Hold on to that for that hope for another 5 or 10 minutes.
It's not a hope. I did that in my playthrough. Did you not unlock it?
I did not. Does that unlock give me the power of vicissitude?
It does. He just sort of stands there as you shoot him.
Yeah, like... You know, with a boss who teleports around, I could see it working if he was like a really high mobility guy, but no. He just annoyingly warps around, infinitely summoning minions who chew through your resources.
Looks like we're pretty close to killing him now.
Unfortunately, this shotgun takes forever to reload. So yeah, I'm just waiting for him to pop up close enough that I can get...
Oh, he's almost dead.
Yeah, hang on. I've got him low enough. I'm going to switch to my Glock and just finish him off with that. Where the hell? There you are. Oh god, is he immune to Glocks? Oh no, I got him.
Why did he participate in this fight at all? Like, he could have just let us get ripped apart.
I mean, apparently he has to be around to summon his little minions, because...
I feel like letting us shoot him is probably an... Oh god. Do we have to? Let's turn around. Let's go back to the City of Dreadful Night. Do we have to do this?
Everything is going according to plan.
We got 4 dots in thaumaturgy.
Yep. Blood
So are we
theft.
officially in?
Can't use that for a good while yet, though. Unfortunately, everything down here is immune to it. Got that just in time to not be able to use it for anything.
So are we officially in the sewer level?
We are officially in the sewer level. This is it. It's a level. It's a sewer. It is a baffling addition to this game. Just, you know, this is a very roleplay heavy game. It's got a perfunctory, I don't usually eat rat, but we're in the sewer level. It's our only source of blood for a while, so... but yeah, this game is generally quite well paced. Combat is usually an option, but not required. Strictly speaking, that's true here. You can sneak through the sewer level. But, you know, that was never an option for us.
Peace was never an option. Because we're trying to create a weapon to surpass Metal Gear. Trying to see how many meme references I can squeeze in here. It might just be those two.
Over 9,000. Does it still count if we just, like, kind of shout them out?
I mean, no. I mean, I think that's a very 2004 meme.
Are we playing by Reddit rules? Does merely acknowledging the existence of the meme count as clever?
I'm gonna say no.
What the hell is the exit? Do I have to get into one of these little pipes and crawl around? I think I do.
Well, so at this point, we've encountered almost all the clans we're going to encounter, so...
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any clans left.
Giovanni.
Actually, oh yeah, that's right.
I guess kind of Quajin, even though they're not actually vampires for some reason. They're looking to act exactly like you would expect vampires to act and look and behave, but they're not vampires.
Right. And strictly speaking, we haven't encountered a Quajin, but yeah.
But do we want to discuss what, like, if, if there was to be like a reboot you were meant to make of Vampire, like, the clans we would include?
Sure. Let's
just hypothetically.
Just hypothetically. We'll go ahead. Right. We'll talk about that while I pop back up to the surface real quick to get more bullets. Which, before we get into that, actually, let's talk about. This is one of the reasons why the sewer level is so bafflingly awful. They at some point realized that this sewer level was a massive, ridiculous resource drain, and that it was real hard to get through it without running out of bullets to the point of being frustrating. So they put little access points back to the surface periodically throughout it, which completely ruins what little atmosphere the sewer level has. To the extent that the sewer level is anything, it is a long sojourn beneath civilization as you descend towards the layer of the Nosferatu, which is completely ruined by making regular pops back up to the surface to restock on bullets at the convenience store. I don't know how a level this bad got into a game this good. This is such rote FPS design in this level. It is just this is
out of time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't just cut it short then. Maybe some kind of sunk cost fallacy. Maybe it's just they had already made so much of it that they didn't want to. I don't know.
I imagine.
Just because, yeah, like this seems like the kind of level that you would get from someone who is like fresh out of game design school, right?
I don't know, like, Dragon Age kind of has this with the dream sequence in the Mage's Tower that goes on forever and is miserable.
Yeah.
And then you fight the Sloth Demon, I want to say. Either Sloth or Envy. Right, so obviously, and I'm looking at Mother Sorrow's crystal ball. It's not my crystal ball. Mother Sorrow's crystal ball, so I can look this up. So, obviously, your basic vampire is your Strigoi. It's Dracula, essentially. That is a strong enough archetype on its own that you don't have to do anything special to it. Like, you can do pretty much whatever with it. You can add something to it, like you can make them snake vampires. Like, I think it's fine. Strictly necessary. Like, you can do that if you want.
Yeah, and in fairness, I can't think of another good place to put the snake theme. So if you want a snake themed vampire, that is where you put it. And it also, we caught that painting of Lilith earlier. It actually works really well with that, just because as sort of the default vampire, the vampire that you expect when you hear the word vampire, the Strigoi is the most connected with, default vampire imagery, like that painting of Lilith. And so, having them actually be snake-themed is kind of neat. I came out the wrong end of this pipe.
You can If you want to, it's fine. If you don't want to, it's also fine. They're
Yeah.
a strong enough archetype that they can not have any special twist to them. But also, it's a perfectly reasonable twist to add if you want to. I imagine a plurality of vampire players are going to play this archetype because it's the most normal vampire. It basically is covering a lot of your... Essentially, it's Dracula. I also feel like it's also essentially Stat and Louis.
Yeah, and it's also when a GM needs a vampire mook or a standard, LaCroix-style vampire prince or whatever, he's going to reach for the Strigoi. So...
Yeah. After that, you got the Camazotz. These are your bat vampires. They're more, they're your biker types, your more wild reveler types. I think the Buffy vampires kind of fall into this category. The Lost Boys, obviously, is your major inspiration. But probably, and From Dusk Till Dawn, both the movie and the TV show, is a major inspiration for this. Since the vampire bat is actually a New World creature, they're your New World vampire. And you obviously want some sort of vampire who's really explicitly, very bat-like, since that comes up a lot. There's an anime called, I want to say, Blood Positive, where it's all these bat vampires running around. They turn into bat monsters. Because you want to have your ancient Mayan bat gods running around in Central America and southern Mexico. It's a bats and vampires, we associate them, even though the only actual blood drinking vampire, only actual blood drinking bat is from the New World, but it works.
Right.
I think it's something you want, because you want to be able to do From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, you want to be able to do From Dusk Till Dawn. The Mesoamerican Bat King God monster thing is that's a very urban fantasy kind of history to have. Is that it's in the same vein of the vampire aristocrat running around in Europe.
Yeah.
Having that for Mesoamerica is makes the setting feel like there's just all kinds of supernatural horrors lying sprinkled around in it.
Also, the Red Court and Dresden Files, who were the main vampire enemies for half the series. You definitely want to be able to do that.
So yeah, there's plenty of fertile ground for the Camazotz. So yeah, that's definitely one I feel pretty confident about. Not that I have any pre-existing opinions on any of these. I am hearing about these for the first time just now because this is a completely hypothetical conversation. And I have definitely never, exchanged multiple Word documents discussing these ideas and then commented upon them with anybody at any time for any reason.
Yeah, of course. Next, I would say, is the Nosferatu. We've talked about this a little, but I know that World of Darkness had Nosferatu be spies. I think they're a more natural association as their saboteurs, because that's what happens in both versions of Nosferatu and also in the...
Yeah. They look all jacked up, so having them have a disease and chaos connection makes immediate sense.
I think the fiction tends to, when you have a Nosferatu vampire, they tend to have a more disease association than vampires. There's a lot of vampires do have that implicit disease association. I think it becomes most clear when you've got a Nosferatu type vampire, in the Strain.
Because Nosferatu look kind of like their disease, whereas with other vampire types, it's really just a leftover from before we had invented the zombie. We have talked about this before, so I won't get into it at length. But yeah, there was a point in time when vampires were one of the better disease metaphors we had. That point in time is now over, which means if you're having a disease vampire, that is a very specific type of vampire, and it may as well be your Nosferatu, because no one is fetishizing disease right now, so...
Yeah, it's we used to romanticize tuberculosis, but there's no disease right now that romanticize tuberculosis was.
So yeah, the vampire's disease metaphor, through a combination of changing norms and also just the invention of better disease metaphors is pretty much totally obsolete. Except for the Nosferatu, where that hideous appearance can, sort of evoke some very disease, and also, I mean, I think just generally, like, chaotic, because, they look diseased a little bit, but they also kind of look injured. Like, like their face has been blasted apart somehow. So, just, having them have this sort of, I don't want to say anarchist appearance, because, what a Nosferatu does with that power is not something they inherit. The concept of Bruja as the punk vampire is kind of dumb, because that's what the anarchs are. Having a punk vampire organization is definitely a good idea. You want to have your anarchs, you want to have them look punk, but you don't want that to be a bloodline. You want that to be an organization that any type of vampire can join. But the Nosferatu do lend themselves to it, and that's fine, giving them, some disease and sabotage powers. Good idea.
Next is the Mara. These are sort of your ethereal nightmare vampires. They visit people at night. They are more ghostly, like Carmilla or Mercy Brown in American folklore, or even a little bit in Salem's Lot, the one child vampire who shows up at his friend's window in the middle of the night. This gets into the sort of the madness vampires we've talked about, maybe an attempt at doing a better version of the Malkavian. But also, I also think these are the vampires who are spies. They can pull thoughts from people's dreams, and they can get through any door, that sort of thing. I'm not 100% on the name, because the name Mara might be better suited for a different type of nightmare creature, but it's the only thing I've been able to come up with, hypothetically.
Yeah, I mean, names are always the hardest part for me, so...
Next would be I might not be pronouncing this correct, and apologies if I am not, the Penanggalan. This is a Malaysian vampire. There's a whole, in Southeast Asia, there's a type of vampire-like creature. They have a bunch of different versions where they detach different body parts to go out and drink people's blood at night. Sometimes it's the head, sometimes it's like the whole torso goes out and detaches from the legs. But you see, like, in Malaysia and Indonesia and the Philippines, you see this type of vampire, and I think that is going to serve the Zimichi's place. I think this is your flesh-warping vampire who does terrible things to their own body and can also potentially do terrible things to other people's bodies and get you some of that flesh-warping that I think was a really good idea of Zimichi, but also lets you get a bigger cultural range in your vampires instead of having, like, 90% of them be European.
And the Penanggalan is, and I have no idea how to pronounce it either. That is my best guess. But it is a really cool concept. Like, especially I find the ones that detach their heads to be most compelling. Although, I'm sure mileage is going to vary on that. But it does have a very neat sort of body horror aspect to it, of just this head just pops off and this ain't good.
Oh no. Is there any way to escape at this point?
I don't think so. We'll see where the last autosave was.
Again, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so. And I mean, that has never happened to me before, so I did not realize that was even a risk to worry about. Normally, I'm pretty good about saving right before these dumb little death traps, which... they're a bad idea, don't do them, but this game does them a couple of different places, so... But yeah, Penanggalan, flesh-warping vampire. Cool concept, helps expand things out past the Eurocentrism that Old World of Darkness was really stuck with. Camazotz obviously helps with that a lot too, but...
Yep. Next is going to be your Tsuchigumo. That is your spider vampires that we talked about a little bit when the Quagen came up. they're Japanese in origin, so it's another vampire outside of Europe. They probably, like, you can potentially give them illusion powers. You could also just spider type powers like webbing and like maybe some poison. Like, spiders have a lot of stuff you can do that you don't have to add anything extra.
Right. And like the idea of a spider vampire, I think, is compelling enough that it can carry something on its own.
Yeah, I don't think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I do think a lot of like silk webbing would be beneficial to them.
Yeah. Next is going to be the Alu. These are your darkness vampires. The Alu is a type of demon in Mesopotamian folklore. The La Sombra was the World of Darkness version of this. I don't really know a lot about the La Sombra and World of Darkness, like what they did.
And as far as I can tell, they're never fleshed out all that well. It might be that I just don't have the right perfectly legal PDFs. But yeah, like they get mentioned as being like some kind of priest caste in the Sabbat, as opposed to the aristocratic sort of ruling class of the Zimichi, but it's not really clear what that means.
Yeah, the Alu, I mean, it makes sense to have a vampire with darkness powers. I'm not sure that there's any, like, literary precedent, but it's something that, like, yeah, vampires don't like the sun, so having a type of vampire that has darkness powers makes sense.
And would you say this sort of vampire should be able to see in the dark?
Yes.
Controversial take there.
You could have, these could also be your vampires who are tied to Lilith. Lilith being a sort of Mesopotamian origin. There's a whole, like, mythplex of the Queen of the Night type figure. Lamashtu is another example of this. The Greek Lamia is another example of this, where there's sort of a devouring mother figure. Lilith is Queen of the Night.
You know, getting into like ancient Greece and ancient Mesopotamia and stuff, that is extending far beyond the point where you need to have a like committed idea of what really happened, right? Like,
yeah.
You need a timeline going back at least 1,000 years, possibly as many as 2,000 for your vampires, where it's like, yeah, we know what happened. Some of us were there for it.
But past that, not really necessary.
But yeah, past that, not so much. And so yeah, who exactly, you know, which vampire types, if any, Lilith is associated with, can absolutely just be a thing where, well, you know, who the hell knows? That is in the before time.
These could potentially be your stereotypically seductive vampires. I could see doing that with the whole nighttime connotation, but again, you gotta be, any vampire can be seductive. Oh my gosh, are you gonna die again?
Potentially. Yes. Yeah, I should probably spam healing more. I had plenty of blood left.
It's fine. So your Aloe Demons, potentially seductive, potentially spies. It's flexible. There's a lot of stuff you can do with darkness powers. I could see...
What the hell? There's this weird bug where it causes me to just shoot uncontrollably when I load the game sometimes.
That's the second time it's happened.
Once again, the wall was attacking me. Self-defense.
Yeah, everyone saw it.
Except in this case, it's actually completely unambiguously true, just like last time. In that is an actual death trap that is ahead of us, so...
We aren't positive, but, like, if this hypothetical game were to be hypothetically made, and it had a bunch of hypothetical iconics, Kotchula would hypothetically be an Alu vampire. I think is what we arrived at.
It was definitely on the short list. Because, you know, practically any Old World Darkness character can work as a Strigoi, but you kind of want your iconic Strigoi to basically just be, you know, Dracula in a business suit, so...
Yeah, maybe Lestat. Probably not the weird thing, the weird parody that we're doing with her.
Yeah, like... I mean, I feel like she's kind of in an Order of the Stick sort of place, where, like, yeah, she's a parody, but she can still be taken seriously. Like, she does...
Yeah.
She has developed a sort of vampiric kind of arc, which is what made me want to, include her, hypothetically, as an iconic, is that, oh, hey, this character actually kind of works. Okay, I'm gonna need some of you to start dying now, just as fast as possible, really. Thank you. That's a good start. Alright. Memo to me.
Great.
Yeah, pull out the SMG for that section.
So that's the...
For that section, Cthulhu, not immediately. Jesus. Now have I missed the... I've missed the window. Fine, I'll just load it.
Alright, so the next would be, and I've tried to look up the pronunciation on this, and I'm not positive. So I'm making an attempt. The Jiangsu, which is the Chinese vampire. Are they in the water?
They are, which means I can probably just ignore them from here, but I've got plenty of Glock ammo left, and I don't want to risk anything going wrong here.
That is fair. The Jiangsu are your Chinese vampires. There's been a lot of influence in the Western vampire and the modern Jiangsu. There's a film series that I don't remember its name. I believe it was called a Lord Strigoi, and it's a Hong Kong film series about a Jiangsu.
Yeah, that sounds right. I saw the first movie in that series. I really liked it, you know. It's funny, the name seems like it really stuck with me, and yet I can never seem to remember what it is. Go figure.
Should I be quiet for this upcoming part?
No, it's purely an attrition thing. Like, these guys are not hard to fight. I just need to spam healing while just unloading tons of bullets into them.
You're gonna use the SMG this time. The Jiangsu are kind of your wizard vampires, but again, you don't want to do actual wizard vampires. Probably what you're going to do is have them necromancy powers. They're all going to be like your psychic vampires. They're going to be like stealing people's chi, which maybe even like eating ghosts, which I feel like are made out of delicious chi. You want to go back to the thing where the Jiangsu are connected to the Taoist necromancy. Oh man.
I saved right before this time, though, so...
Okay, it's...
Yeah, I can switch to the shotgun this time, see how that goes.
If they follow you into the pipe, I think that's a good thing. Because you can, thermopylae it and have them in a choke point. fine.
Problem is that that masher back there, when I load the game, it starts up again. So if I accidentally fall down into it, that could be a huge problem. Come on, guys. Come play with me. There you are.
Did we do it?
It seems so, but I'm not going to save until I've verified. Alright, and like there's a bunch of little mini bosses in here, but that is actually the hardest part of the sewer level, is when there's just a bunch of small guys. My humanity's not great either, so I think we might have to go in here eventually, so there. So there's that mess taken care of. How do I move this barrel? Am I supposed to move that barrel? I'm not sure if I am. Anyways, do we have any vampire types left?
Yes. The last, and I've got no clue about the pronunciation, the Vikolakis. This is it's actually the Greek word that essentially means werewolf, but it's had this weird semantic shift where it means vampire. This is your sort of vampire who's associated with the grave, like the whole earth of the tomb thing. They've got probably some like sheltering themselves underground, but also they're, whereas the Camazotz is your wild biker vampire. This is sort of the feral city dweller. This is the darkness of the city, the alleyway and the sewer. You got to be careful. You don't want to do gangrel. It's got to be its own thing. You don't want it to be the chief werewolf, so it can't have any animal powers, but I think it can still work as an archetype. And that would be
weird,
your 9.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying that was kind of a, fell through the pipes there for a bit, but progress, so.
Yes. I think that'd be a good, good range of vampires. If you make, and my preference is to have the Nosferatu's origin be that they were the Edenu, which is a type of Mesopotamian demon associated with disease. And if you do that, I think you end up with, I made a count of this. You end up with 3 vampires who have origins in Europe, the Strigoi, the Mara, and the Vikolakis. You have 2 vampires with origins in the Middle East, the Alu demon and the Nosferatu. You have 3 that have origins in East Asia, the Tsuchigumo, the Penanggalan, and the Jiangsu. And then you've got 1 that has origins in North America, the Camazotz, which I think is a much better range of origins than you got in World of Darkness, where you have like 11 from Europe.
Yeah. Damn it, I have no blood to heal anymore.
Now, are we gonna have to do this again?
We are.
Oh God.
Yeah, yep. It's the sewer level, everyone.
It's fine. It's fine. Now, obviously, when you have your clans of vampires, how many do you want? Like, what's the best vampire number? Is it 9?
No, it is 13, of course.
Yeah.
So, what are do you have written down any? I don't know if we actually hypothetically recorded the ones that we came up with and decided weren't worth keeping, even though they got us closer to that spooky number.
I mean, they're with a document. I just holding my breath to see if you survive this. I guess you gotta throw another barrel in the water or something. Or is that just bugged?
It appears as though that is just bugged.
Can you take them out of the water and put it back in?
We're about to find out. That said, the thing that caused it to seize up, it is not a physics interaction.
That's not good.
It is a specific animation, so I think the game might just believe, yeah, it thinks the physics animation that animation has already happened, and so it won't let it happen again. So yes, I absolutely have to stay.
Wait. Use dark magic.
Oh yeah, obviously. Just gonna...
Because that is some bullshit.
Yep, that's fair.
This does not even count as cheating.
Not escape. There we are, tilde. And I do often feel like when a game does something like this, and I open up the console or whatever, like my thought is always like, you brought this on yourself.
So obviously the goal is to hit 13, but you also don't want to like start scraping the bottom of the barrel just to hit that number.
Yeah, like you come up with your 13 best ideas, and if a couple of them suck, then you cut those ones.
Alright, so first of all, I would say this is number 10. This is a perfectly fine vampire. It just, the moment you're down to 10, you might as well just bring it down to 9, because that's a better number. Is your Lamia, which is your snake vampire, as a separate thing from the Strigoi. It's a perfectly fine. You can do, the Queen of the Damned, you can do, Lair of the White Worm, but you can also just have those be Strigoi. It's perfectly fine as a vampire type. It's also not strictly necessary. You can have it be a separate thing. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a ton to say about that. They primarily get cut because at that point it's like...
Yeah, 10 is... Yeah, like... Yeah, 9 is a reasonably mystical number. 9, 12, and 13 are all nice mystical numbers, but if you've got 10 or 11, then you should probably cut down to 9 rather than leave it at something weird. Unless you're making a Kingdom of Loathing reference, then you gotta do 11.
Next is going to be the Glostig. This is an attempt at like doing a Fae/plant vampire, but again, like, especially if you're going to have playable Fae, like a she, and your hypothetical, like, this really just feels like a Fae with a blood motif. At which point, I think the player who wants to do that is probably wants to play a Fae with a blood motif rather than a vampire with Fae motif.
Right.
Leonon Shi is a legitimate Fae, but it also is a legitimate Fae that seems more Fae than vampire. Like, it's a Fae that drinks blood rather than a vampire that's kind of fey. And the plant thing, like, I like, but I feel like is one of those things, vampire rather than a whole clan, a whole bloodline. Like, you'd see a vampire who had a plant motif, who had, like, a blood garden she grew, but, like, that's her unique thing. It's not something that a whole type of vampire needs to be doing.
Yeah, which definitely when you're getting to that, like, you're at the stage where you're reaching for I missed time to jump.
You're starting to reach for stuff to do. Next is the Edemu, which is I mentioned as being potentially what the Nosferatu's original name was before they arrived. You could try. The attempt was to try to like make them sort of like the poison vampire, or have them be associated with the miasma. Like, we've talked about vampires as disease metaphor, but people didn't used to know that disease was contagious. They thought it was bad air. So doing something with that seemed like it could maybe work, but they felt like a monster of the week rather than a player character. Like, as written, they seem like something that that shows up and is disruptive for your session, and then you kill it, done with it. They didn't really feel like at a clan. So they ended up not making the cut. And last on the list of 13 were the Ravenwalkers. This is I want to say this is a North American monster that's sort of vampire-like. They steal people's hearts and they steal lives from their years, and it's like the Tsuchigumo, where you could see that very easily being a type of vampire. But also they need more of a stick than that, and the only thing I guess at the time was having them be your sorcerer vampires, because you see a lot of sorcerer-type vampires, but that's probably not good enough for that's not a good idea for a vampire clan, as we've discussed in this playthrough a couple times.
Yeah, it's not so. So this bit right here, which we are using dark magic to skip past, you have to turn these pumps off, then turn them back on, and swim against the current fast enough that you can get up through these reservoirs, which that is not real gameplay, that is busy work, so we're using dark magic to get past it. And we are past it now, though, so I'm going to go ahead and there. Now, this gets us past the bullshit part of the sewer level. The rest of the sewer level is a little bit combat and or stealth focused, but generally speaking defensible, except that by the time you get here, you are already exhausted with the fucking sewer level.
Yeah.
If the sewer level had just been this second half of it, it would have been basically fine. You know, all the bullshit jumping puzzles isn't quite the right term for that pump shit, but it was pretty close. Same basic type of frustration, certainly. And, you know, that dumb little swarm fight where the fight was basically just have enough blood to heal yourself while pumping just amazing amounts of bullets into the little flesh monsters. It's just, yeah, there's a ton of bullshit in that first half. Now the second half, you know, it's combat heavy, but there's a couple of different enemy types. The combat feels decent. You know, it's kind of fun to do. It, you know, it starts to feel like a first-person shooter still, but it's at least a good first-person shooter. Whereas that first half was like a grand tour of why everyone hated sewer levels in first-person shooters, and why, you know, thank God they've stopped making them for the most part.
those were the 4 vampire types that had write-ups, but ultimately didn't make the cut. There were a bunch of just entirely also-rans, but like this is something that pops up in the folklore and literature, but we weren't really sure what to do with them. One was like a invertebrate hematophage that was not a spider, like an actual hematophage, like a mosquito or a tick or a leech.
Darkest Dungeon did those really well, but
yeah,
after, hypothetically speaking, obviously I put no thought into this whatsoever before this episode, but hypothetically, if I were to have done so, I would have spent several days mulling it over and still not really come to any conclusion as to how I might implement that in a hypothetical game and have it actually be, you know, something you would want to play and not an enemy in a dungeon crawler game. Because
yeah, and like, there's room in a game to have multiple monster player characters that are invertebrate splats, like, but after the Tsuchigumo and the Migo, probably have enough. Like, the limit, there's room for more than one, but the limit ultimately probably 2.
yeah, I mean, it's just, once you have the spider, and then you have, which, you know, the spider with the webs has a certain sort of terrible elegance to it. And then with Amigo, you know, you are just a sack of bugs that's leaning really heavily into the bug as creepy and unsettling thing. And, you know, there's some overlap between those, but there's enough distinction that they can be sort of 2 separate monster types. But then, like, it's not categorically impossible for there to be a third arthropod-based monster that is also interesting, but I don't know what other ground it would cover, because those two are blurring into each other at the edges already, and...
Like, and I don't know, like, if in this hypothetical game you would have room for stuff like Bloodlines, or if you just, like, let the types have that enough customization that if a player wanted to do something weird, you just let them. Like, if somebody wants to do a Tsuchigumo and be a mosquito woman, that could be your solution ultimately.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm a Tsuchigumo, but I'm a giant mosquito instead of giant spider. That's probably all you need. It doesn't really necessarily need to be a whole independent thing.
And it is worth noting that some people feel like they absolutely cannot alter the fluff. Not only, like, you know, it's not enough to have a sidebar saying, by the way, you can alter the fluff. It's not enough to have a sidebar saying, you can play a mosquito person, just use the Tsuchigumo stats. I've seen with a lot of players, they feel like in order to not be a spider person, they absolutely need to not be playing the spider splat. That's dumb but common, which means you do have to design around it, but there's limits to how much you can design around it, right? You don't want to make a bad splat just to cater to these people who have this real fixation on labels.
I guess I don't have that much experience with it, so I'm just not... So if you have, like... So even if you had a sidebar where, like if you had just, like, 1 or 2 word, like, sample bloodlines, so you'd be like, sample bloodlines for, Tsuchigumo, mosquito woman, giant hornet woman, centipede woman, and they had the idea, well, I want to be a tick woman. Those 3 examples are not going to be enough for them to go, oh, I can be a tick woman. They need it, like, explicitly spelled out.
It's, yeah, and, like, that's only a specific kind of player. Like, that's not common. You know, it's common enough that if you run D&D for long enough, or tabletop RPGs in general, although running things for any kind of pickup group is going to be mostly D&D, because that is just overwhelmingly popular, but you will run into that player type before too long. Like, I would say that's somewhere between 1 in 10 to possibly as much as 1 in 5 of players are like that. Oh, fucking hell.
Please tell me there was an autosave recently.
Not super recently. And because with the sewer level...
Oh my god, kill me.
Yeah, the problem with the sewer level is that it takes so goddamn long to move 10 feet that the normally very effective autosaves are significantly less so.
So about 1 in 10, potentially even 1 in 5 players are going to need it spelled out.
Yeah. But, I mean, you don't want to be bogging down the game for the other 4 out of 5, if not 9 out of 10 players with that.
Right.
So, like, you know, there's that one guy who, you know, feels like he can't play a ninja just by taking the rogue class and saying he's from Japan. The class has to be named ninja, but that's one guy in, you know, every group or two. Not that's not the player base in general.
Right. Another, because I really like the Darkest Dungeon version of that, but it's like we could not come up with something that was not stepping on the feet of either the Tsuchigumo or the Migo. Like,
Yeah.
Potentially there's something to be done, but we did not figure it out. Hypothetically.
Yeah, we're confident that had we attempted to figure it out, hypothetically, it would not have worked.
Yeah. Fire vampire is a really common archetype you see. It's very common in like northern South America and the Caribbean, all the way up to like Louisiana. You have vampires. Aren't you going to use dark magic on this part too?
I am.
Are you already doing it?
Yep.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I have no clips.
I'm so glad I taught you that. I mean, I'm so glad Mother Sorrow taught you that.
Fang Requiem taught me that.
Oh, did he?
Yes. When would Mother Sorrow have taught me this?
I don't know. Look.
Like, she
you know
was...
I only pay like 50% attention at any given time.
I've only
I'm
had...
so glad you run into so many occult entities that there's questions over where you got your dark magic.
Is this... Whoops. So you gotta be careful with the dark magic. But no worries, I can fix this.
Because you got things like the Sema, which I'm going to say is from Suriname, where it's somebody who like sheds their skin and turns into a ball of fire, but also wasn't really able to figure out anything with that either. And like, this is a kitchen sink horror game you're doing. It's not just vampires. Somebody with fire powers, like fire. Somebody who has fire as their shtick. Their primary shtick is probably not a vampire. They're probably either like a pyromancer or a dragon or a demon. That's who your fire person is, rather than a type of vampire.
Yeah.
Possession vampire was another thing, like the Vitala of India was something, where they're like a separate sort of consciousness possessing a corpse and maybe doing some body hopping. You're saving this time.
Hang on, I'm still no clipped. Let me fix that. And
Are we getting hit while they attack us?
we are, and there's an autosave there anyway, so we're just going to use that one. Yeah, this game's pause function doesn't always work properly.
Troika really needed like an extra like year and a couple $1 million. I don't know how much money video games cost to make, so I have no idea if that would be even remotely helpful, but they needed more money and time.
Yeah, I mean, this game is pretty close to done. It's got tons of content. I think an extra 6 months would have done it, but that was 6 months they did not get, so here we are. And the fan patches fixed a lot of it, but apparently it couldn't fix that. $1 million might have done it back in 2004.
Yeah. But, like, possession... something with, like, corpse hopping, but I guess that also feels a little monster of the week.
Yeah.
I don't know. It also, like, is straying into the two issues. Is one, you might, like, at that point, maybe you just let your player play a ghost if they're focused on possessing people. And, like, as the ethereal type thing, like, we've already got that mapped out with the Mara.
It's, yeah, that, you know, possession, and you don't want to split these things up so narrowly that any single one feels incomplete, like it's no fun to play, because it's just this teeny tiny little fragment of a complete monster.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You probably want, anyone with ghost powers is probably going to want possession powers. You know, there should be an option to not necessarily buy the possession power specifically, but if someone has access to the ghost discipline, the ghost-themed discipline, then you want the possession power to be, like, on that list. Because, by the way, hypothetically, you would not want to do disciplines the way that Old World of Darkness did them, where it's a specific list of 5 powers that you must unlock in order. Because people are sometimes going to want to skip one, because they consider it out of theme for their character.
And also, you have to have a version for every single monster type. So, you have to have your Vampire Necromancy, and your Wizard Necromancy, and your Werewolf Necromancy, and your Mummy Necromancy, which is obviously the best Necromancy. You only really need the Mummy Necromancy. And sometimes you even get, like, in World of Darkness, you get even worse. Like, you just have each bloodline with Necromancy has its own separate type of Necromancy. So you can have, like, 7 or 8 different Necromancer-type vampires who each have a different type of Necromancy.
Right.
It's like...
And then occasionally you'll get something where it's like, yeah, this, we had the Giovanni Necromancy and also the Tremere Necromancy, but we decided we didn't like the Tremere Necromancy, so we made another Tremere Necromancy. We're calling it, like, True Necromancy or something.
We heard you like Necromancy, so you put Necromancy in your Necromancy kit so you can Necromance when you Necromance.
Pretty much. It's, trying to arrive at any kind of consolidated list of World of Darkness magical powers is just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. I actually don't think Cam and I ever explicitly discussed these next two. Or they weren't in the document that I didn't write up because we haven't discussed this.
Chocula clan?
Chocolate vampires. I mean, it's such an iconic archetype.
I mean, it basically goes without saying, doesn't it?
Yeah. But then that puts us back at 10, so we'd have to cut a clan.
I feel like Strigoi isn't really necessary.
So, other thing to do, like, I've tinkered with my head, and I feel like I'm close, but I've not been able to figure out something entirely, is the Vampires the Other, which gets talked a lot about in Slayers and Their Vampires, which is about the Dhampir. I feel like there's something to be done with that. It's like vampire as the abject other, but I've not been able to piece together what it would be. Sort of this vampire is this isolated person who's been sort of cast out, but I've been working around in my head, I've not been able to piece it together exactly.
How do you turn that into a power set that you can apply to a player character? How do you apply that to a player character who necessarily has 2 to 5 friends?
It's something that, like, and because, like, if it got it to work, it could be really good. It could be like the Zenichi, where it's something came up with and is unique and has traction, but we'd have to figure out what it is, and at the moment, not been able to figure out anything to do with it. I think it could be cool, but haven't exactly figured it out. I actually was in the shower thinking about it, and I think I came up with something. Not right. Gone.
I hate it when that happens.
I'm pretty sure I came up with something, and I cannot remember what it was. Save that for this episode, and I'll pitch it to Chamomile. And I don't remember what my pitch was. I'll just have to take a shower until I remember it. This thing killed us last time, didn't it?
Sort of. You know, I was fighting it, I was doing fine, and then I accidentally plunged into the bottomless pit on the side, so, you know, note to self, keep track of where that is. I do like how it has just a little tuft of hair left over. It really helps emphasize the body horror of this.
That hole in the middle of its stomach is what Sigmund Freud, actually he would not say this, but what a Freudian would call a yonic symbol.
I can't actually pause. No, it killed us in like 18 hits. That happened while I was trying to save the game.
Amazing.
Luckily, I think the autosave is finally getting a little more sensible for us. Nope, I was wrong.
It's fine. We have to fight this thing again for the third time? Oh, hey, you got no clip on.
Yep, and I am done with this shit, so here we go. We've already seen this content, so, let me just navigate around real quick until I find where is...
I like how she's got her hands on her hips. She's just completely done.
Save on this side of the door this time. I say completely done. I am at least, you know, going to fight this boss, but,
One idea that I had recently was, vampire as old age, vampire connected to senescence and obsolescence, and old feeding on the young, which I think would be how you would, include the Ravenmocker, because that is part of their, mythical archetype, is they're usually very old and they're stealing the lives. They're stealing the life from people who are younger than them. So, like, that is how I think you would include Ravenmockers and have them have their own thing beyond being a sorceress vampire. But again, having 10 is not enough. You got to just cut it down to 9. But I think that would make the Ravenmocker work as an archetype. Then they're sort of like the poverty creatures in Danae mythology, but they're also like that is what the Ravenmocker does in Cherokee mythology.
See, this thing isn't even hard. At least not for a guns build. Yeah, I just lost track of the battlefield and plunged off the side. It's a cheap gotcha death.